Okay, so let's jump right into this.
Sounds good.
This question that you guys posed about Nikki Hilton and how she managed to marry into the Rothschild dynasty.
Yeah.
Seems like kind of a head scratcher for a lot of people.
That is.
We've got a bunch of sources to work with here.
Right.
We've got a Reddit thread, which is absolutely buzzing with opinions on this. We've got some Wikipedia deep dives into the Rothschild family.
Okay.
And we even have an AMA with an author named Mike Rothschild.
Interesting.
He's written a whole book about Rothschild conspiracy theories.
Wow.
And not to make things too confusing, he's no relation to the Rothschild. But
yeah, that is interesting in itself.
it is kind of a fun fact.
Yeah, it just goes to show you the extent to which
Right.
powerful families capture the public imagination. And then these perceptions, often fueled by, you know, sometimes pretty wild theories,
Right.
actually impact their lives.
Yeah. So let's start with that perception.
Okay.
Especially with those RHOBH fans on Reddit. They really paint this stark contrast between the Hiltons and the Rothschilds.
Yeah.
The Hiltons, you know, especially when you think about Kathy and Paris,
Mm-hmm.
they're often viewed as a little bit social climbery,
Yeah.
known for their,
Right.
let's just say, attention-grabbing antics.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say.
And there's this like underlying assumption
Yeah.
that families like the Rothschilds, who are so steeped in this like old money tradition,
Mm-hmm.
they would be naturally hesitant to welcome someone with that kind of reputation
Yeah, absolutely. I can see that.
into their very inner circle,
Makes sense.
especially because there's even these claims in the book, House of Hilton,
Oh, really?
that some of Paris's engagements were actually broken off
Oh, wow.
because other families did not want that association.
Oh, that's brutal.
So that's what everyone is really wondering.
How did Nikki...
How did Nikki, the quieter Hilton sister, manage to break through those barriers?
Right.
And that's where Nikki's very carefully cultivated image comes in.
Okay.
The Reddit thread is completely full of comments
Mm-hmm.
about how she's really deliberately distanced herself
Okay.
from the more, shall we say, flamboyant aspects of her family's image.
Yeah, I mean, you just think about
Right.
even her first marriage, the quick Vegas affair.
Right.
Worlds away from, you know,
Totally.
those extravagant headline-grabbing weddings you'd sort of expect from a Hilton.
Right.
I mean, was she making a statement with those choices?
It almost feels like it.
Yeah, like she recognized that if she wanted to gain acceptance from the Rothschilds,
Yeah.
aligning herself with their values of discretion and sophistication would be key.
Right. It's like she was playing an entirely different game.
Totally.
More NYC chic.
Yeah.
Less LA spectacle.
Exact.
But then even with that very calculated image.
Yeah, there's still the question of how did these two
I know.
even cross paths?
How do you marry someone you never met?
Right.
So that's where this idea of shared social circles comes in.
Okay. I'm interested to hear about this.
Right. So there was one really insightful comment on Reddit pointing out that these super elite circles often revolve around
Yeah.
these really exclusive spaces. You know, those high-end charity galas,
Yeah.
the private clubs,
Sure.
maybe even like the occasional polo match.
Oh, yeah.
These are the kinds of places where someone like Nikki Hilton would naturally intersect with someone like James Rothschild.
It's like that old saying.
Right.
It's not what you know, it's who you know.
Right.
But taken to the extreme.
Exactly. And those connections, they can be incredibly powerful,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to forging relationships that really bridge these seemingly disparate worlds.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've got Nikki Hilton's very calculated image,
Right.
the power of those shared social circles. But we really can't ignore the elephant in the room.
Oh, the Rothschild conspiracy theories?
The Rothschild conspiracy theories.
Uh-huh.
Luckily, we have Mike Rothschild's AMA
Okay.
to kind of help us unpack this a little.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because he very directly addresses those outlandish theories.
Oh, I'm curious, what are some of those?
Yeah,
Lay it on me.
like there's one claiming that Benjamin Disraeli and two Rothschilds orchestrated the American Civil War at a wedding,
No way.
or that the family controls like $500 trillion.
Wow, that's literally twice the amount of money that exists on Earth.
It's crazy.
Wow.
It almost feels like these theories say more about our anxieties surrounding wealth and power than about the Rothschilds themselves.
I think you might be right.
What do you think?
I think you're onto something.
Yeah.
Mike Rothschild actually highlights how online spaces can kind of create these echo chambers
Oh, interesting.
where these ideas that are often really rooted in anti-Semitism actually gain a lot of traction.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily that everyone believes them wholeheartedly,
Right.
but they sort of become part of this shared narrative, almost like a social currency within those communities.
Yeah. Right. And he uses that example of the which way Western man meme.
Yeah, I've seen that one.
Right on the surface, it seems like this kind of harmless architectural comparison.
Right.
But then you dig a little deeper
Mm-hmm.
and you realize it originated from this white supremacist text.
Oh, wow.
So it's like
Yeah, that's disturbing.
a reminder that these seemingly harmless online trends
Yeah,
can have these really disturbing origins.
absolutely.
And I think it underscores the importance of critically evaluating the information we're encountering online,
Right.
especially when it comes to powerful families like the Rothschilds.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so we've talked about the Hilton's reputation,
Right.
Nickomache's very contrasting image,
Yes.
and those ever-present Rothschild conspiracy theories.
Yes.
So where do we go from here?
Well, I think to really understand the context of this marriage, we need to dig a little deeper into the Rothschild family history, particularly James's father, Jacob.
Yeah.
His Wikipedia entry is really interesting.
He's quite the accomplished figure.
Yeah.
Long list of achievements.
Yeah, he's got a lot going on.
And contributions, especially to the world of arts and heritage.
Absolutely.
Right. He held so many prestigious roles,
Mm-hmm.
from serving as a trustee of the National Gallery
Yeah.
to his involvement with the Hermitage Museum and even the Qatar Museum's authority.
And then there's all those restoration projects.
Oh, right. All the restoration projects.
Somerset House, Spencer House, even the ancient city of Butrint in Albania.
Wow.
He's clearly really passionate about preserving history.
He is. And we can't forget about Waddesdon Manor,
Oh, of course.
that magnificent estate that he inherited.
Yeah, with the,
A wine cellar
oh my God.
with 15,000 bottles
Wow.
dating back to 1870.
That's practically a museum in itself.
It is.
Really speaks to their history, their
Okay.
commitment to preserving their legacy.
Yeah, and the fact that Waddesdon has hosted everyone,
Right.
from Ronald Reagan to Margaret Thatcher,
Mm-hmm.
it really adds to that mystique.
It does.
So we see this family
Yeah.
with this long history of wealth,
Absolutely.
influence,
Mhm.
and this clear dedication to philanthropy.
Yes.
So does that help us understand how they might view someone like Nikki Hilton?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Right.
It's clear they value tradition and legacy.
Yeah.
But are those values evolving?
That's a good question. And
Ah.
how much does this changing landscape of wealth and power factor into all of this?
Right.
The Reddit thread had some interesting thoughts on that.
Ah, yes. That's where things get even more interesting.
Okay.
We'll have to unpack that next.
All right, sounds good.
Stay with us.
So we were talking about the Rothschilds and their long history,
Right, all that wealth and influence.
and really their commitment to preserving their legacy.
Yeah.
But how does that really square
I know, right?
with this kind of new world
Yeah.
that the Reddit thread brought up,
Mm-hmm.
where it seems like these entertainment tabloid media families
Right?
are suddenly gaining all this wealth and influence?
Yeah, it's like they're the new power players.
Yeah, at this unprecedented pace.
It really challenges those traditional notions.
It does.
Of what even is acceptable wealth these days,
Right.
and how these established families kind of navigate this world
Mm-hmm.
where the lines are getting so blurry
Right.
between like old money and new money.
Yeah, I mean, you think about someone like Nikki Hilton,
Mm-hmm.
even with her more quiet image,
Right.
she still comes from a family that built his empire on hotels.
Yeah, and let's be honest,
Right.
a fair amount of media savvy.
Exactly. So it's like,
And that media savvy is precisely what's allowed these newer families
right.
to make their fortunes.
Yeah.
They've mastered this whole art of like leveraging attention building brands,
Mm-hmm.
capitalizing on their image in ways that were just unimaginable
Right.
to previous generations of wealth holders.
So are we saying that the old rules just don't apply anymore?
I mean, it's possible. Like,
Yeah.
are we really seeing this big shift where the traditional gatekeepers of wealth and social standing
Mm.
are becoming a lot more open to
Mhm.
those who have made their fortunes in these like less conventional ways?
It's interesting because even in Benjamin de Rothschild's comments
Right.
about the family weathering that 2008 financial crisis,
Yeah.
he really attributed their success to those conservative practices.
Right. And focusing on long-term investments.
But there's an underlying message there
What's that?
about adaptability,
Oh, that's a good point.
Right. It's like they're acknowledging that the world has changed.
Mm-hmm.
And to stay on top, they need to evolve too.
Yeah, and maybe that evolution also extends to their views on marriage.
Right. Maybe they're realizing that financial acumen and this ability to navigate this new media-driven landscape,
Right.
those are assets
They are.
in and of themselves, regardless of where that wealth came from.
I like that idea.
Yeah, so bringing it back to Nikki,
Okay.
maybe her family's background in building a brand, which, let's be real, the Hiltons have totally mastered.
They have.
That's actually seen as a plus now.
Oh, that's an interesting angle.
Right. It challenges that whole assumption
Yeah.
that the Rothschilds would just automatically be totally averse to someone who's associated with this
The chaos.
celebrity world.
And maybe that explains why Nikki's quieter, more sophisticated image was so effective.
Yeah, like she's this bridge between those two worlds.
Totally.
Someone who gets the power of image and brand building,
Mm-hmm.
but also values discretion and tradition.
She's that intersection
Yeah.
of old and new.
It's so fascinating.
Yeah.
How like individual choices and these carefully crafted personas can really influence those perceptions and maybe even change these deeply ingrained social dynamics.
It makes you think about whether this marriage was less about Nikki breaking through barriers
Yeah.
and more about those barriers just becoming less rigid
Oh, I like that.
in the first place. Yeah, like it's not so much a story of defying expectations as it is a story about evolving expectations.
Totally.
The world's changing and the markers of wealth and social acceptance,
Right.
they're changing right along with it.
So we can't say definitively what really allowed Nikki Hilton to marry into the Rothschild family.
Right.
But it seems like there are all these forces at play here.
It does.
Nikki's personal choices,
Yeah.
the evolving landscape of wealth,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe even like a little bit of a shift
Right.
in the Rothschilds' own views
Yeah.
on what a suitable match really is these days.
And let's not forget that fascination,
Right.
that public fascination with it all.
Totally. Like the Reddit thread, the conspiracy theories.
It just shows our enduring curiosity
Yeah.
about these powerful families and how they actually operate behind the scenes.
Right, because even in this age of information,
I know.
there's still this sense of mystery
Absolutely.
surrounding those who hold so much wealth and influence.
There is, and that's what makes this whole deep dive so interesting.
It does. We've peeled back some layers.
Yeah.
But there are still so many questions.
Right, like that one about intermarriage that came up in the AMA.
Oh, yeah.
How do the Rothschilds approach that in the modern era?
That's a good question.
And of course, the impact of those conspiracy theories.
Right. They cast such a long shadow,
They do.
even though they're totally false.
We need to explore that more.
Yeah, because those theories, they don't just tell us about the Rothschilds.
I know.
They tell us about us,
That's right.
about our own anxieties and fascinations with wealth and power.
There's so much to unpack.
So much more to unpack.
Absolutely. Let's continue this deep dive into the Rothschilds.
Okay.
Their legacy, their place in this ever-changing world
Sounds good.
in our next installment.
It's interesting that you bring up intermarriage.
Yeah.
The Reddit thread touched on that a bit, and it definitely sparked a lot of debate.
It's a complex issue,
It is.
especially for families with long-held wealth and traditions.
Right.
Historically, endogamy was really common.
Oh, yeah, marrying within a specific group.
Exactly. It was all about preserving that lineage,
Right.
the wealth, the social standing.
But it does seem like even those rigid lines might be blurring a little.
Yeah, maybe even for families like the Rothschilds.
Right. We're seeing those hints of a shift
Yeah,
in other areas, like how they're approaching this changing landscape of wealth.
right. It's not crazy to think that their views on marriage might be evolving too,
Total.
especially when you consider Nikki Hilton
Right.
marrying into the family.
Yeah, that's a pretty strong indicator
It is.
that things might be changing.
Yeah, like that whole idea of acceptable wealth.
Right.
It's transforming.
It is.
And maybe those changes are impacting other parts of their lives.
Yeah.
Like who they deem suitable for marriage.
And it's interesting to think about this
Yeah.
against the backdrop of all those conspiracy theories.
Right.
Because no matter how unfounded they are,
Yeah.
They still have an impact
Absolutely.
on the family's image and public perception.
It's what makes Mike Rothschild's work so important.
It does.
He's not just debunking these myths.
Right.
He's really highlighting the real-world consequences of these beliefs.
right, they can fuel prejudice, discrimination, even violence.
Exactly. Like, remember that example about the which way Western man meme?
Oh, yeah, it seemed harmless.
Right, until you dig a little deeper.
And you realize it's connected to white supremacy.
It's a reminder that we all need to be careful
We do.
about the information we consume and share online.
Especially when it comes to harmful stereotypes
Yeah,
and conspiracy theories.
absolutely. Critical thinking and media literacy are more important than ever.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
So what does all of this really tell us about Nikki Hilton's marriage into the Rothschild family?
Well, I think it suggests that it's a lot more nuanced
Right.
than it might seem at first glance.
Yeah.
It's really a story that intertwines image-shifting social dynamics and maybe even a touch of adaptation on the part of one of the world's most influential families.
It's a good reminder that there's always more beneath the surface.
There is.
All these layers of complexity that we need to unpack.
And we've only really scratched the surface here.
We have.
There's so much more to explore.
There is.
When it comes to the Rothschilds, their history, their impact on the world.
It's like we've opened a door
Yeah.
to this fascinating and multifaceted world.
We have.
One that really invites us to keep exploring and keep asking questions.
Exactly. And who knows what other intriguing connections and hidden truths
I know.
you might find.
That's the beauty of a good deep dive.
It is.
It's not just about finding answers.
Right.
It's about sparking that curiosity,
Yeah.
encouraging you to keep digging, keep questioning, and really keep expanding your understanding of the world around you.
I love that.
Yeah, so thank you for tuning in
Yes. Thanks for listening.
to this Rothschild Deep Dive.
We'll see you next time.